All right, everybody, we appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Obviously, we brought IFBB Pro and animal athlete Evan Centopani here. We want to thank Kevin and the world-renowned community. My boy Anthony Seraphin, who you guys have seen destroying the weights here on a regular basis. He's a New Jersey State Trooper and an absolute tank. Put us onto this gym, I'd say, how long ago? Easy, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's certainly one of the most hardcore gyms in Jersey. It's like I told Kevin before, it's one of the last of a dying breed. So we're honored to be here, and it's the kind of gym that we like to be affiliated with and to support. So we brought Evan here. Evan's one of the most knowledgeable guys in the sport that I've ever known. One of the more articulate guys, not putting any pressure on him to speak all tonight, but just knows the sport inside out, really studies it, and is extremely meticulous, and is the kind of guy that you very easily learn from. So he's here really to answer any questions you guys might have about the lifestyle in general. You know, he just recently competed and did very well at the Arnold Classic and in Australia. So, you know, if you want to talk to him about the competitive aspects of the sport or training or life in general, or obviously eating and nutrition where he's an absolute expert, this is your opportunity, so take advantage of it. Ev?
All right, first, I want to thank all you guys for coming out. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the fact that so many of you showed up today. That's awesome. I want to thank everybody here at World Gym for having me. Had I not been so beat up from all the travel and whatnot, I would have loved to have caught a workout here, because it looks like just like a great gym. I can tell, I can feel the energy in here. You know, it's great. It's great to be home. It's great to be here, and you know, I'm here today, obviously, you know, for you guys. So whatever it is you want to ask, I'm your man. Just let it fly. And again, thanks for having me. So let's get started.
What's your take on the argument of the 6 foods that work versus the whole if it fits your macros argument?
The which foods that work?
Like, there's the thing about the 6 foods that work. Like, you should only stick with chicken, you know, beef, rice, sweet potato, whatever. Versus the whole, like, well, you can kind of eat whatever you want as long as it fits your daily intake.
I guess I would probably say that I wouldn't adhere entirely to either one of them, but there is kind of truth to both of them, but neither one are entirely correct. The whole if it fits your macros argument, in a way, even for most of us, you know, or myself, for example, who diets for a bodybuilding competition the traditional way, eating what would normally be considered clean foods. I hate to use the term, but you know, deriving my calories and my macronutrients from unprocessed, more, I guess you could call them pure sources, versus you know, not looking at things in terms of, well, a carbohydrate's a carbohydrate or whatever. I guess that this is where I would make my argument. People saying, well, if it fits your macros. So they're basically looking at macros and saying, you know, protein is protein, or, you know, carbohydrates are carbohydrates. Doesn't necessarily matter where you derive them. I think I kind of put that in the same room as a calorie is a calorie. And, you know, anybody who looks at it reasonably will say, okay, you know, person A eating 2,000 calories a day comprised of a variety of what would normally be considered healthful foods, you know, good quality protein sources, healthy fatty acids, you know, complex carbohydrates, vegetables, so on and so forth, is going to most likely have a different body composition than someone who's going to derive 2,000 calories a day from, let's just say, devil dogs and ho-hos. You know, and then that's just plain logic. So to argue that a calorie is a calorie is really not a great argument. So that being said, I would probably continue it to the whole if it fits your macros argument. I do believe that the sources of things matter. I do believe that it's not as simple as just looking at macronutrients. Micronutrients are important as well. You know, there are people who are consuming a diet where they say, well, I'm eating 400 grams of protein a day, and I'm eating so many carbohydrates and all this fat, and I'm not getting the result that I want. I'm not growing, I'm not getting bigger, I'm not getting stronger. And I think it's because a lot of times people neglect the micronutrients. Vitamins and minerals, those are micronutrients. We all know how important they are because they're going to be what helps us utilize the macronutrients. So I would urge everyone to seek out foods that are more traditional and more, what would traditionally be considered more healthful foods, unprocessed foods, as close to nature as possible. Because I think that they're what your body is going to process most efficiently and most effectively, and I think they're going to generally give you the best results. That being said, I think that cheating in a diet or throwing in some junk here and there, I think that's a good thing. I think it's useful. But in terms of, I see people on Instagram all the time taking photos of their, if it fits your macros meals, and it's all crap. I can't believe that would produce the same result as seeking out, as comprising a diet of more healthful foods. So
no Pop-Tarts post-workout anymore.
No, I think we could do better. I think and I think that as much as people don't look at bodybuilding as an endeavor where you're chasing health, because if you say, I just competed in the Arnold, no one is saying, well, he wins because he's the healthiest guy on stage. I think that for all of us who are, whatever our goals are, in order to pursue them and to achieve them, there has to be an element of health. The body works best when it's healthy. A body that's healthy is going to get lean easier. It's going to put on muscle easier. So I think that eating good food has a lot to do with your health. And I think people that eat like crap generally aren't going to be as healthy. And I think the less healthy you are, I think the harder of a time you're going to have achieving your goals. So yeah, I think eating better food is important. I think it does matter, and that would be my advice to anyone who asks me.
Comparing processed fly fillet, tilapia, flounder, and cod, eat very similar protein and nutrients. And then the other question is, what's your opinion on conventional seafood?
Okay. On the topic of fish, fish is a unique thing because it's one of the last few wild protein sources, assuming it's not farm raised. You'd be hard pressed to find anything unless you go out and you hunt deer or you consume wild game. Everything else is farm raised. Chicken is farm raised, cattle is farm raised. It's typically eating a diet that's less than optimal. Fish is the only thing left, as again, assuming it's wild caught, that's eating a wild diet. And I think that does say something. Of course, you could debate, you could get into what's in the ocean and the mercury, things like that. And, unfortunately, I don't think there really is, unless you're hunting, like I said, doing it yourself or raising animals yourself, there really is no perfect, everything kind of has its drawbacks. Comparing the fishes that you mentioned, I would generally avoid tilapia, swai, and bassa, and fish like that, because most of the time they're coming from countries like Vietnam and Asia, and the fish farms over there, I think, are really, at least based on what I've heard, are pretty filthy. If you guys look at fish farming, it's really pretty gross, typically. The fish is swimming around in its own crap, and who knows what. Most of the time, farm-raised fish, they're just feeding them pellets. It could be animal byproducts. It could be corn. Fish is not meant to eat corn. The whole reason you're eating fish to begin with is because it's supposed to be more healthful because of what the fish itself is eating. So go ahead and farm-raise fish and feed it corn. You might as well just buy chicken. But assuming it is a wild source, I think it's entirely worth, depending on what your budget allows, if you can fit it, I think it is a great thing. I enjoy fish because it's such an easily digestible protein source that, for me, if I'm eating 6 meals a day and it's all whole food, and say I'm eating my first meal at 9 and I want to consume my last one by 9 p.m., it only leaves me 12 hours to consume 6 meals. I'm eating every 2 hours. If it takes me a half an hour to eat a meal, it's an hour and a half before I need to eat again. I want foods that digest efficiently and quickly, because the more food I can put down, the sooner I'm ready to eat again. So people that enjoy red meat, it never worked for me, because a steak, it fills me up too much. Even, you know, really complex carbohydrates, high in fiber, didn't work good for me because it just zaps my appetite. If I was someone looking to stretch it out and eat every 4 hours or something like that, maybe it would work. But I want food that's in, boom, I digest it, I'm ready to eat again. For me, like, I like cod because it's generally, it doesn't break the bank. You can get it wild caught, tastes decent. Flounder, fluke, sole, those are all great, you know, great fish. People say, well, what about salmon and swordfish and things like that? Those are great, you know, high in omega-3s, but again, they just, the white fish allows, it just digests so quickly. If I'm eating salmon, it kind of seems to sit around a little bit longer. I would be more likely maybe to have that as a last meal, eat it in place of maybe something like red meat. Yeah, that's my take on fish, I guess. Does that cover it pretty much? All right. As for the men's physique division, I know it gets a lot of criticism, especially from bodybuilders, because, you know, they rag on it. They say, well, you know, it doesn't belong on a, you know, the same stage as bodybuilding, blah, 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 blah. Me personally, I think anything that encourages more people to, you know, to train, to live a more healthful lifestyle, I think is a good thing. Not everybody is going to be a bodybuilder. And you know, truth be told, if you look at the current crop of competitive bodybuilders, not everybody wants to look like that. I get it. You know, I think a lot of the physique guys, I think a lot of them look great. So, you know, I think it's a matter of personal preference, and I think, you know, I think everyone should train to look how they want to look. It's not worth spending all this time in the gym and, you know, all the dieting just to fit someone else's criteria. So however it is you want to look, if you want to look like a men's physique competitor, then train to look like that. I think that's great. You know, everybody should do what they want. Right. Probably the biggest problem I see, at least one that's really like at the forefront of my mind, is maybe guys doing whatever it takes to be competitive. Though, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. I mean, it's a competitive sport, and these guys are professionals. So whether you're in the NFL or if you're a professional bodybuilder, everyone is going to do what it is that they need to do to be most competitive. You just hate to see any type of disregard for health or people sacrificing their body to win a contest, or even worse, for the perceived potential of winning a contest. I mean, every guy, most guys competing on the Olympia stage, all believe that they can and will someday be Mr. Olympia. And the fact of the matter is, only one guy is going to be that guy. And since the inception of the contest in, you know, 50 something or 60 something, there have only been, 13 or so many champions. So whether it's at the pro level or the amateur level, I think bodybuilding seems to have a lot of delusional people. And unfortunately, in a sport where it involves your body, that could mean something dangerous. So I hate to see anybody get so wrapped up in bodybuilding, whether it's at the amateur level or a pro level, where it could mean them, you know, just... We all start bodybuilding to improve our quality of life, right? We want to look better, we want to feel better, and bodybuilding is supposed to enhance our life. The point at which you become, you know, a slave to it, and you're just so wrapped up in it that it begins to, in a way, kind of ruin your life because you're so obsessed with it. It's no longer, you know what I mean? Something's wrong. So I think, maybe to answer your question more directly, maybe a lack of balance. You know, that guys could maybe strike a better balance between pursuing their goals and doing it in a way that's maybe a little bit more healthful, in a way that's a little bit more enjoyable. But then again, I mean, it's just the competitive nature of things. You know, things are bound to go there, I think. For example, my leg training. Right? I find squatting to be a really, really productive, effective movement. But it's not feasible to think, okay, I'm going to go in every week, train the maximum amount of intensity, the maximum poundages, and do it week after week after week after week. You know what I mean? You begin to overuse things. You begin to develop, you know, little chronic or nagging injuries, and it's hard to back off because every time I walk in the gym, I want to do what's most effective. You know, but sometimes doing what's most effective means, you know, not injuring yourself or living to, quote, living another day, or, you know, being able to walk in that gym next week and have a workout that's effective. So I think it's hard to pull back. What do I do? I'm not good at it. Because, you know, say for example, you're getting ready, you're always thinking about the next contest. If there's 52 weeks in a year, that's only 52 leg workouts or 52 chest workouts. And you say, that's not a lot. And you're getting ready for a contest and say you're, 14 weeks out, it's only 14 workouts. You know, so you want every time you walk in the gym, you just want to squeeze the absolute most out of it. What do I do? A lot of times it gets to the point where I go in the gym and something just hurts and I just can't train that way. So it'll kind of force me to back off. Hopefully you could be smart enough where you don't get to that point. I think that listening to your body and whether it's backing off on volume or backing off on some intensity or doing different, doing different movements or developing a system where, of periodization, where you say, okay, I'm going to go so many weeks training this way, and then I'm going to figure in a forced period of X number of weeks where it'll force me to back off. That would probably be the smartest thing to do. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm glad we talked about it.
What point in your program before competition do you kind of get away from functional, more compound exercises and into more isolated exercises?
Never, absolutely never, no. And I get asked that question a lot. You could almost make an argument that pre-contest, it's even more important to do the compound heavy movements, because not only do they help keep the muscle there, because when you're training for a contest, the heavier you're able to continue to train and the greater intensity you continue to train with, it's gonna convince your body to keep that muscle. Start lightening up the weights, changing the exercises, lessening the stress on your body. Your body's gonna say, okay, I can let it go. I don't need to hold it. But another reason to keep those big movements in there, a lot of free weight, compound movements, heavy weight, high intensity, is it's great for getting in shape. People don't realize that. Say you have two options. Say you're training shoulders, right? And you say, okay, I could sit on this machine and I can do machine shoulder presses. Or I can grab a barbell and I can do standing overhead barbell presses. Which one's gonna burn more calories? Obviously the barbell, right? So, do the barbell presses. Now you're not just working your shoulders. People say, but I want to isolate my shoulders. Why? You could be doing the barbell presses. Now you're using your shoulders, but you're using your back. Those last couple reps, you're using your glutes, your hamstrings, your legs. I mean, you're involving your entire body. The amount of calories you're going to burn doing that in the condition that it's going to help you to achieve, as opposed to saying, well, I'm going to lighten the weight and I'm going to incorporate more isolation movements, forget it. The harder you can continue to train that, like that, with the big movements, heavy weight, high intensity, you're going to be able to get away with doing less cardio. You're going to keep more muscle. I think you're going to have a harder, denser, fuller look. I think it's just better. I think it's just better training.
Let's say 8 weeks out from the contest, what's your reps and sets scheme?
It's really the same off season as it is pre-contest. I kind of buy into the philosophy that whatever puts the muscle there is going to keep it there.
I was hoping that was the answer.
Next question. Oh, I'd say a multivitamin, absolutely. You know, if you look at things in terms of what's most important, or you know, kind of first things first, or establishing a proper foundation. You know, and I get asked this all the time. People ask me, you know, what about this supplement? You know, to be something new, and it's got 20 ingredients that I've never heard of, and you know, things like that. And then you get further into speaking with the person, and you find out that they don't even take a multivitamin. And you're like, you know, why? You know, I think you have to look at everything. I mean, consider this: how many people do you know that they have high aspirations, they have high expectations, they want to achieve, they want to enter a bodybuilding contest, they find a picture of a pro bodybuilder and say, I want to look like that guy, and they don't even do the most like minor, most fundamental thing properly, whether it's drinking enough water. You know how many people just don't drink enough water? I mean, something so simple as that. I mean, aside from breathing, okay, I mean, if you don't breathe, you're going to probably die in, like, you know, a couple minutes. If you don't drink water, you got like a couple days. If you don't eat food, I don't know, you could probably last 4 weeks. I mean, that should give you an indication of how important each of those things are. I mean, water is really, really fundamental. Yet there's so many people that don't even drink enough water, don't get enough sleep. So everything, you have to start, I think, at the ground up, and you have to do what's most fundamental properly and completely first, before adding something else. So to answer your question, of the supplements, assuming your diet is correct and all that stuff, I would definitely say a multivitamin. From there, I would add in an essential fatty acid product. From there, you know, I guess depending on what your approach is with your diet, you could argue for a protein powder. One product that I really, really love, and that it just doesn't get a lot of attention because with all the new products that are out, it just doesn't seem sexy enough, is just BCAAs. I'm a big advocate in animal nitro. It's something I use a lot of, especially pre-contest. If you're flooding your body with BCAAs, especially during training, you know, you get up to around 20 grams, you're going to notice a huge, huge difference. It's not the kind of difference you notice when, say, you slam a pre-workout drink. It's the type of difference where it's a difference between like a false energy and having actual like integrity. You know, you get that solid pump, you have stamina, you have energy. That's real. Not like, oh, I'm hyped up, you know, for 20 minutes. I'm a big believer in BCAAs, that product in particular. From there, I don't know. From there, it's all icing. You know, it's all icing on the cake. I put on most of my mass probably between the ages of like 18 and like 22. I put on a lot of size and a lot of strength. And back then, it was all about heavy, and it was I rarely went above like 10 or 12 reps, and I would even back then go as low as, you know, like 4 to 6, like very routinely. Definitely. Now, I mean, at this point, I try to make my training as well-rounded as possible. So yeah, I lift heavy. You know, I push the intensity. I keep the compound movements. I mean, but I also do isolation movements. I also do some high rep stuff. I try to incorporate a variety of things rather than adhere entirely to any one thing. Because to be honest, I mean, if you look at all the best champions, you know, that the sport has ever offered, whether it's Arnold, Lee Haney, Dorian, Ronnie, Jay, they've all done something just like different, you know, and they've all been fantastic. So I think there's certainly more than one ways, you know, more than one way to skin a cat. There's probably more than one thing that could work for, you know, even in any given individual. People say, well, you have to find that one thing that works for you. But, you know, your body's changing all the time, and, you know, it's not like people talk about finding that formula. They say, well, whatever you did for that show, just do that again. But it doesn't work like that, you know, because there's so many things involved. You know, you can't just repeat that same diet and that same, you know, all the training stuff. It's just, that's why I think bodybuilding is such a challenge, and it's such a constant process of discovery, or educating yourself, because you learn something once, and you may find yourself learning something. You may find yourself learning the same thing over again, or you may find yourself learning something that kind of contradicts that, or something different from that. So I wouldn't, to answer your question, I would probably say that the safest bet is, if you consider the fact that your body builds itself, right? That it the only reason your body has to put on muscle tissue or to get bigger, to get stronger, is overload, right? You put your body under a certain load of stress, and it responds to that by fortifying itself. Put a bar across your back with a certain amount of weight that your body's not accustomed to, and your body says to itself, that sounded bad. Load up a bar or put it across your back, and it's a load you're not used to, and your body goes, holy shit, that's heavy. I feel like that's gonna crush me. But it builds itself so that in the future it can handle that. Your body, just like running, say you can't run a mile because you get so winded. Keep, building your way up, and soon you can run many miles. Your body will, the only thing your body responds to, growth or improvement, is to overload or to pushing it. So I guess how you choose to push it is up to you. But generally, guys that train, they go in, they say, wow, what a pump, and they train for that pump or whatever. I would say, unless you're really, really genetically gifted, you're not going to respond to that. It's going to take ample weight and intensity and overload. Supersets, drop sets, giant sets, negatives, forced reps. I mean, these are all just different techniques for adding, more intensity or, variety to a, just add different forms of stress to a training session. It doesn't matter pre-contest or off-season. I mean, a lot of these methods can just be used year-round at any given time to, just to make the training more effective. So pre-contest, off-season, doesn't matter. It can be good, yeah, depending on how you incorporate it or how you do it. It can be good, it can be bad. It's not so much what you do, but how you do it, like with anything, I learned pretty early on, I think in the very beginning I was training everything twice a week, maybe for the first year or two of training. And I found myself, say I was training like 2 or 3 things a day. I felt like I wasn't being thorough enough, and by the time, say for example I was doing arms, by the time I had what I felt would be a thorough, proper arm workout, an hour had gone by, and I'm like, man, I still have to train 2 more things. So it was like, oh man, how am I going to be in the gym for 3 hours? It just didn't seem feasible. And once I cut that out, and I just pretty much just started doing one major body part a day, and training everything once a week, I just really grew a lot. But it took me a long time. In the beginning, when I started out, it was hard to get past the idea that less, to accept the idea that less is more. It's still tough to, think that that's a possibility. But a lot of times it is. The answer isn't to do more reps or to train a body part more often. I get asked this all the time. People say, well, how many times a week do you train your calves? I say, once. They say, that's it? I say, yeah, but I train everything else once a week too. They say, well, yeah, but calves are different. Why don't you just train them more? And I said, well, how many times a week are you training them? They say, 3. I said, well, are they getting bigger? Are they the size you want? No. It's not because if your calf training is shitty and it's not sufficient, you don't need more shitty training. You know what I mean? If what you're doing is crap, you don't need more crap. You just need to make it good and do it once. You know what I'm saying? So I think that pretty much applies to anything you train. It's better to do it once a week, do it hard. And I think that by the time you do that, you find that there's not really enough time in the week to do everything twice. At least that's what I found. But Lee Haney did it. you know, and he was fantastic. So it's like anything else, I think it's individual. But for me, that's what I found out. Once a week, hit it hard, let it recover, worked really well for me.
What does your cardio look like off season and in season? What kind of makes it improve?
Off season, I don't do any cardio. A lot of it's because I just don't want to spend the time to do it. You know, it's maybe a matter of just being lazy. But to be honest with you, what's come out of that is the realization, like, it's really beneficial, I think, for everything to be cyclical, whether it's diet, whether it's training, supplementation. If you do anything too often, you lose that response to it. So what I found is by not doing any cardio in the off season, when it comes time for pre-contest, and I add in, you know, a half an hour a day, a few days a week, boom, I respond to it right away. Whereas, you know, if that were my baseline, then I feel like, okay, come pre-contest, now I have to do that much more. I would rather keep the training intensity really high, and I think if you're really killing it, you know, with, you know, your leg training and you know, between the squats and everything like that, and you know, you're deadlifting heavy and hard, and maybe do some high rep deadlifts, things like that. I think you get quite a bit of, I don't know if it's true cardio, but you stay in pretty good form that way, I think. Aside from just keeping you in shape, keeping body fat in check, and keeping you in shape physically, I think it does do something for your cardio, because training that way, I've never really found myself in an off season like feeling like, oh man, this is just kicking my ass. I think if it's at the point where you can't train the way you want to train, with the intensity you want to train with, because your cardio is holding you back, I think then it's a problem. But I think if it's you know, muscular failure that's going first, then I think you're okay. So again, I guess it's an individual thing, but I found that to be sufficient for me. In terms of types of cardio, I've done it both ways. You know, like low intensity, you know, just walking on like a flat treadmill. And I think it's just kind of a waste of time. I think that a little bit higher intensity. Again, you know, if you're going to use a treadmill, just putting the incline all the way up, and the more muscles you can use, you know, okay, now your hamstrings are burning, your glutes are burning. It's much harder on your body. You're going to break a sweat much quicker. I just think you just burn that much more. Same thing, you know, you're at the gym, you got a step mill. You know, how much quicker do you break a sweat using a step mill than just, you know, walking along low intensity on a treadmill? So I think I don't know if I wouldn't call it true high intensity cardio, but I think something where you're incorporating more muscle and it's a little bit more challenging, I think, is the way to go. At least, again, for me, what I found.
Do you ever incorporate like sprints or sled pulls or anything?
I don't, but I could see that being effective. You know, I mean, you look at sprinters and they're super lean and very muscular. So I would say it could definitely work. You know, jumping rope maybe, just like you said, sprinting. Sure, why not? You know, whatever works. You know, I didn't start out like with the intention of like, I want to be a pro bodybuilder. Like I did my first contest. I'd been training pretty seriously for a while. Like I was very diligent about it, and I thought about competition, but mainly because I wondered what I would look like in contest because I'd never been ripped. I'd been big and put on a lot of size, but always wondered, I wonder what I'd look like if I was really, really lean. At the time, I was 23, I was a year out of college, and I was working out with this guy who had competed before. And I remember we were working out one day, and he's like, you know, there's this show coming up, and you should do it. It's in 10 weeks. And I was like, okay. And like I knew nothing. Like I didn't know what the NPC was. I couldn't tell you anything. I never bought a bodybuilding DVD. I never had a magazine subscription. Like I just loved to train, and that was just what I did. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I knew how to get in shape because I had dieted before. I just never dieted for a contest. I never had to time it. So he's like, I can guide you, I can look at you and let you know if you're on track and help you with anything you need help with. So I said, okay, great. So I did it, and I ended up winning the heavyweight class and winning the overall. And I was like, all right, cool. But I still didn't have any plans of like going further. About like almost a year went by, and I was talking to somebody, and they said, you should really like try the next level. You should do the junior nationals. And I was like, all right. And the person offered to help me. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I did, and I ended up winning the super heavies and the overall. And then everyone was like, well, you should just, you're qualified for the nationals, and you won this show, you should do it. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I ended up taking runner-up. And I guess it was probably at that point where I said to myself, all right, I should come back next year. I think I can win this. And I did. But it was never like, I want to be a pro bodybuilder. Like, I'm quitting my day job and you know what I mean? I never felt that way. So it's just, for me, it was just kind of an evolution of things, and it kind of just went that way. And I just kind of went with it. Well, if you travel internationally, it becomes difficult because custom laws and biological laws, you typically can't bring food into other countries. You can bring the food for the trip, so okay, you eat it on the plane, it gets you there. But like I say, I just competed in Australia a couple weeks ago. I mean, you got your food for the plane ride, but once you're there, you just have to find a grocery store. The hotel rooms that we had, had kitchens, and you just, you got to go to the store and make the food. It's everybody else is in the same boat. It sucks. It's a pain in the ass, but what are you gonna do? You just have to do it. If I'm traveling domestically, typically what I'll do is I'll prep a lot of food in bulk. I'll vacuum seal it. I'll freeze it, and I'll bring. I won't bring every little thing, but predominantly I'll bring all like the protein sources with me. I'll just pack it in a cooler with some ice packs. It's already frozen. Put it, in a cooler in my checked baggage, and whenever it gets there, it's still just totally frozen. And then I'll just hopefully have a room with a fridge and some type of little bit of a kitchen setup, and just pull things out as I need it. And you can kind of piece things together here and there, but you just find ways to kind of piece everything together. But it requires planning. A lot of people I've noticed, especially with regard to nutrition, they just don't really plan enough. If you don't, you're screwed, because the food is, it's easy to go anywhere and find a gym and train. And how many guys, first thing they do, they get off an airplane, they haven't slept, they haven't eaten anything. We got to get to the gym. We got to get to the gym. It's like, for what? You're probably doing yourself more harm going to the gym. You're already in a deficit because you haven't eaten, you haven't slept. Go to the gym and just dig yourself in a deeper ditch. So again, first things have to come first. Your rest, your food, hydration, things like that. Then, okay, yeah, you want to go to the gym and think about doing something extra. Yeah, sure. But it's important, and it definitely takes a lot of planning, but it can certainly be done. I would probably say to assess why you're doing what you're doing, right? What's your reason for competing? Because a lot of people, they have certain expectations, and I think depending on what your motivations are, those expectations could be realistic or they might not be realistic. There's a lot of people who go into competing their first time and they're so gung-ho about it. They're so like, it's everything to them, and if they don't have the experience that they expected, it sends them so far in the opposite direction where they almost hate it, and it's F bodybuilding and stuff like that. So I think it should be, whether it's bodybuilding, it's physique, whatever it is, you should be doing it because you want to do it. You enjoy it. It's how many people do I talk to getting ready for a contest and they're complaining, oh man, this sucks, and I feel like shit, and I hate this, and It's like, do something you want to do, man. You know, like nobody ever put a gun to my head and told me I had to compete. You know, I mean, coming up in my father's house, if I ever complained to him about it, he'd say, well, then what are you doing it for? Then go do something else. Don't complain. You know, life is short enough. Why spend it doing something you don't want to do? That being said, training for a show is going to be rigorous parts of it. It's going to be parts that, you know, you're pushing your body, you know, maybe feel great. But at the end of the day, you should always be reminding yourself, but I'm doing this because I know that this is what it takes to be my best, and I want to be my best. So even though I hate this, I love this, you know, because this is what's going to bring me one step closer to where I want to be, assuming it is where you want to be and it is what you want to do. So it would be my advice to someone in bodybuilding or anything else in life, do it because you want to do it. And I think at that point, your expectations should fall a little bit more correctly into place. And also, it should allow you the ability to look at what you need to put into it, okay? A lot of people, I'm gonna win this. I mean, literally in my gym, right? I've heard people talking about, well, it'd be great to be a pro by next year and then compete at the Olympia like the next year. You know what I mean? Like you hear some like absurd stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, look at the way you train. You train like, you know what I mean? You don't even train like, I would have smoked you when I was 16 years old. I train harder than you. So, meaning, if you have lofty and high expectations, does what you're doing reflect that, okay? If I were to sit here and tell you, I want to win the Arnold, or I want to win the Olympia, and that's my expectation that I will do that, then what I'm doing day in and day out had better be really, really fucking spectacular, okay? Because to win one of those shows, okay, you have to be spectacular. And you're up against the best in the world, all right? So if I'm saying I'm gonna be one of the best in the world, is in world class, is what I'm doing, is it world class? Does it match? So whether it's on a professional level or an amateur level, why are you doing what you're doing? Do you wanna do it? Are your expectations in line with what you're doing every day? If everything fits together, you're gonna have a good experience, you know, and it's gonna be good for you. If it's not, and things are out of whack, it's not gonna live up to what you want it to be. So that would be my advice. Cheat meal, keeping in mind that it's done primarily to induce a positive effect. It's functional, right? It serves a purpose. Other than, wow, this tastes good, I needed a break from my diet, right? We're doing it to, you can say I'm getting ready for a contest. I'm having a cheat meal because it's gonna rev my metabolism back up. It's gonna fill me back up. It's gonna do positive things for me. So that being said, I do it as often as I need to, as often as I feel the need for it. It could be once a week, it could be 3 times a week, it could be one day where I just take the whole day and eat. You know, I've done it different ways. Keep in mind, in bodybuilding, there is no wrong answer. There only is what works, what's effective, and what's not effective. So I mean, if somebody came up to me and they told me they're eating, you know, a dozen Krispy Kremes every day and they looked fantastic, they said, you think I should drop the Krispy Kremes? I'd say, no, do not. Whatever you do, don't stop eating those. Because something's working. I was just going to say something, I forget. How many times has someone come up to me? They said, you know, I'm doing this for arms, and they'll enumerate, you know, they'll walk me through the whole thing, and they'll go, is that okay? And I said, well, I don't know, are your arms growing? And they say, yeah. I say, yeah, it's okay, you know? Whatever works is okay, assuming it's not putting your health, you know, in jeopardy. Yeah, there's no rules. So same thing with a cheat meal, as often as I feel like it could be effective, or as often as needed. When I do have it, I will have, like, I won't worry about the amounts of, say, fats or carbs or protein, or, you know, does it have sugar? But the one thing I do try to do is to make sure that it's more natural sources of those things. I'm trying to think of, like I wouldn't eat like a TV dinner, you know? Like I would, you know, if you go and you have a burger, you know, or you make one at home, you know, like I don't care, I'll make it with 80% lean meat, and that's fatty, you know, but it's, you know, it's something I bought, it's gonna be of quality, and it's all gonna, because for me, a lot of it's digestibility. If I go and eat shit food, I'm gonna feel bad, and the purpose of that meal is to make me feel better. Right? It's supposed to elevate me. It's supposed to give me more, you know, when I go in the gym the next day, I'm going to go in there and wreck it. Not go to bed and feel gassy and fucked up, and it's supposed to feel good. So that being said, I aim for foods that digest well for me. Like having like a big breakfast meal usually does good for me, you know, steak and eggs and, you know, toast with jam and, you know, some waffles, and it's like everything that I like and everything that digests good for me, and it's you know, it's fat and it's protein and it's carbs and it's sugar and it's salt and it's, you know, but it's all decent sources of all of them, you know. So I would say to have foods that sit well with you, and never just go for just crap, you know, because there's no reason for it. You could, you know, if you want fat, there's a lot of great tasting natural sources of it, you know, that are just going to do more for you. Because ultimately, you want something that's going to do as much for you as possible. Because that's the reason why we're doing it. So, yeah, for me, that's kind of my philosophy. You know, I never really do. I haven't worked out in about 2 weeks, just because with the traveling and the show and all that, I haven't had time to get in a gym, and I feel like I'm ready to go nuts. Probably maybe a week here and there wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, people talk about taking 2 weeks, and that just seems like a lot of time. But again, I mean, all this stuff is individual. But me personally, usually not more than a few days, you know. If I were, you'd probably have to physically remove me from the environment. So like, if I went on vacation, like I'm not gonna go to a gym, because, you know, it's just, unless I'm at home and I'm in my environment, I'm on vacation, I would just say, screw it. But so long as I'm home, it would be tough for me to just not go to the gym for a week. But is it a bad idea? Probably not. Probably not. It's just tough to do. Off season, pre-contest, everything always feels so good. I think just because you're doing all this cardio, so, you know, you have all this blood flow, and calorie-wise, you're eating, you know, just at or just below your maintenance level of calories. So you're in a slight deficit. So by nature, I think your body is much less inflammatory. You know, your carbohydrate levels are much more in check. In the off season, I feel like when you're, you know, eating all this food and there's a lot more carbohydrates, you just naturally have a lot more inflammation, and I find myself with like a lot more pain. You know, my back is tight, this gets tight. But when that happens, and I go for, you know, like deep tissue massage, I find it to be really, really beneficial. It definitely helps to keep me loose. But yeah, definitely. You know, it's usually it's what do I think I can get away with, right? Because when you're dieting, if you can, the more food you can eat and still get in shape, that's what you want to do, right? So you don't lighten up on the calories or, you know, the carbs, things like that, until you feel like, okay, things aren't happening. Let me do that to elicit a change. And then once you've elicited that change, you could feel your body starting to drop. You could see changes. Then you ramp it back up. And when you bring it back up, you're still below, you know, where you were a couple days ago. So it's a constant, you know, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of scenario. But it's not like it's set in stone, like, you know, okay, I'm going to do this for this number of days. It's a lot of it is by feel, because say I pulled carbs back for one day, and all of a sudden everything just jumps forward. Okay, well then, you know, I'll maybe do it for one more day, but if things are starting to go, you know, in the opposite direction, okay, I'm going to bring it right back up. But maybe I could bring the carbs down for 5 days and just get better and better and say, geez, I'm not losing any fullness and I'm staying nice and strong, so I just keep it like that. So it's really, you know, the body is, you can't really know or predict what it's going to do. You know, there's so many variables involved. So to just adopt a diet plan and be like, okay, follow this for a week. For a week's a long time. You know, say you're dieting for 10 weeks, that's 10% of the prep right there. Maybe by Wednesday, everything was great. And the next 4 days, things just went downhill. I mean, in 4 days, you could do, you know, not to sound dramatic, but you could do a lot of damage. And in the same respect, you could make a lot of positive progress. So things, in order to get the very most out of it, it's really what is optimal day by day, you know? And that's how you have a good prep. Because if you wait weeks at a time, things get away from you, and it's not ideal.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you. Good to meet you.